Renner was walking his 3 children past the St. Mary's Churchyard at 10 past 10 on a Saturday morning in June, when the baby Sam threw his tin rattle over the churchyard fence and into the ivy. "Sam, 18 months," wailed the small, polite wail of a baby who has understood, in the middle of the wailing, that he is responsible for the injury. Job stopped the wagon. "Sam, do not do that again." Sam wailed harder. Job's 2 older children, Eddie, 5, and Prudence, 3, leaned out over the side of the wagon. Eddie said, "Papa, can you climb the fence?" Job said, "Papa is too big to climb the fence in his good coat." Prudence said, "I will climb it." Job said, "Prudence Renner, no." The churchyard gate opened. A woman in a plain blue day dress and a small straw sun hat came out with the tin rattle in her hand. She was 32-ish, plain-featured, brown-haired, with a soft, honest face. She smiled at Sam. She walked up to the wagon. She held the rattle up. "Ma'am," she said to Sam gravely, "I believe you threw this." Sam stopped wailing. He stared at her. She said, "May I give it back?" Sam nodded. She handed him the rattle. He gripped it. He held it against his chest. He did not throw it again. The woman said, "Sir, I am sorry to have interrupted. I heard the wail from the pew and thought a child was hurt. I am Merritt Halstead. I am the schoolteacher at the second school in the north half. I was praying inside." Job Renner took his hat off. He said, "Ma'am, my name is Job Renner. My children are Sam, Prudence, and Edward. My wife Alma died in 81. Thank you for climbing the fence. I could not have done it in this coat, and Prudence was going to do it herself in 1 more second." Merritt Halstead looked at Prudence. Prudence looked back. Merritt said gravely, "Miss Prudence, I have a fence in my own garden that a child of your size would climb very well. I would not tell your father about it." Prudence said, "I like her, Papa." Job Renner said, "Prudence Renner." Merritt Halstead laughed once. It was a small, honest laugh. She said, "Mr. Renner, I would offer to walk your children to the mercantile with you. I am done with my prayers, and I like to walk. If you would rather I did not, please say so." Job said, "Miss Halstead, please walk with us." They walked. Merritt Halstead, in the 4 blocks between St. Mary's and the mercantile, taught Prudence to skip. She taught Eddie to walk with his hands behind his back, the way a proper man of 5 walks in town. She held Sam on her hip, while Job carried a sack of flour out of the mercantile. She let Sam pat her cheek. He patted it firmly. Job Renner watched all of this. At the mercantile porch, he said, "Miss Halstead." Merritt said, "Mr. Renner." He said, "I would ask you a plain thing. My aunt has been keeping my house since Alma died. She is turning 71 this fall, and would like to move to Denver to live with her sister. I have been trying since April to hire a housekeeper. I have hired 3. All 3 have left within a month because I have 3 small children, and my children are, plainly, 3 small children. Would you consider coming out to the ranch on a Wednesday afternoon to meet them properly? Not for the position necessarily, just to meet them. If you would rather not, please say so plainly." Merritt Halstead said, "Mr. Renner, school closes for the summer on the 15th of June, which is Wednesday next. I am free from the 16th. I would come on the 17th. That is the Thursday." Job said, "That is the Thursday. I will send the buckboard at 9. Merritt said, "I will be at the boarding house at 9. Sam, on Merritt's hip, laid his head against her shoulder. Merritt adjusted the tin rattle in his hand. Job Renner watched Sam lay his head down and had no words for what he was watching. He did not try to say any. She came on the 17th. She stayed for the afternoon and the supper. She came back on the 18th. She came back on the 19th. She stayed the 20th night in Job's aunt's guest room because Job's aunt insisted on it, and because Job's aunt was a woman of forceful opinions, who had by then decided that Merritt Halstead was the one, and did not intend to allow Merritt Halstead to be talked out of it by ordinary means. Merritt accepted the housekeeper's position on the 23rd. She moved into the aunt's guest room on the 25th. Job's aunt moved to Denver on the 28th. The children took to Merritt inside 3 days. Prudence began to call her Aunt Merritt inside a week. Eddie asked, one morning at breakfast in September, whether Aunt Merritt was going to stay. Job did not know how to answer that yet. Merritt answered it. Eddie, I am staying as long as you and your sister and your brother want me to stay. Eddie said, then we would like 100 years. Merritt said, I will do my best. Job Renner did not press her. He was a plain man, and he had learned, at Alma's death, that a plain man does not press. He watched Merritt at his own plank table, read the Bible aloud to Prudence in the evenings, and he thought about it. He watched her sew Eddie's Sunday shirt in October, and he thought about it. He watched her walk the pasture with Sam on her hip at the end of a September afternoon, and he thought about it. He did not, however, say anything to her about what he was thinking about. Merritt, who was 32 and had learned things at her own age, waited until January. On the second Sunday of January, at supper, at the plank table, after Prudence and Eddie had gone to bed and Sam was asleep in his cradle at the corner of the kitchen, Merritt set down her spoon and said, Job. Job said, Merritt. She said, I would like to say a plain thing. I would like to say it now. I will not press you, and I do not expect an answer tonight. I would like it on the record. Job said, say it. She said, I have been in love with you since the mercantile porch. I have been in love with your children since the churchyard fence. I did not come out on the 17th of June looking for a household. I came out because I liked your baby's face on my shoulder. I have said nothing since, because you had said nothing, and because it was not my place to press. It is my place to say a plain thing at my own plank table. That is my plain thing. Job Renner sat at his own plank table and looked at Merritt Halstead for a full minute. He said, Merritt, I have been in love with you since the walk to the mercantile. I have been in love with you every day since the 17th of June. I have said nothing, because I was afraid I would misspeak, and cost my children the best housekeeper we have had since Alma. I have been a coward. Please forgive me the cowardice. I would like to marry you. I would like to say plainly at this same plank table, with all 3 of our children asleep in the next rooms, that I would very much like to. Merritt Halstead said, Job Renner, yes. The circuit preacher married Job Renner and Merritt Halstead in the front room of the Renner Ranch on the last Sunday of February. Job's aunt rode up from Denver. Prudence carried the ring on a folded piece of blue muslin. Eddie stood witness for his father, with his shoulders back like a man of 6. Sam sat on the aunt's lap and did not throw anything. He had, at nearly 2, learned the courtesy of not throwing things at ceremonies. Afterward, on the porch step, Merritt sat with Job and watched the pasture go gold under the last February sun. Merritt said, Job. Job said, Merritt. Merritt said, I want to say a plain thing. I want to say it now. Job said, say it. Merritt said, the tin rattle. In the churchyard. I was in the pew because my sister had died the week before. She had lived in the town 4 years. She was 30. Her fever had taken 3 days. I had put her in the ground on Tuesday. I had gone to the pew on Saturday to sit alone and to see if I could find any part of my sister still walking. I heard the wail from the ivy at 10:10. I got up and went out because a baby was wailing. That is why I was in that churchyard at that hour. Job said, Merritt. She said, I want you to know that I did not walk out on the 17th of June with a plan. I walked out because a baby had thrown his rattle in the ivy, at the moment I most needed a baby to. Job Renner put his hand along her cheek. He said, Merritt, Sam threw that rattle for a reason we did not know. Sam is the plainest small preacher a person could ask for. Please tell your sister for me, in your prayers tonight, that the ceremony was to my satisfaction. Merritt said, I will. 2 years on a warm September evening at the Renner Ranch, Merritt Renner sat on the porch step with Job beside her, and their small daughter Alice, 5 months old, asleep against her chest. Prudence, 5½ now, was on the porch bench with Eddie, 7, playing a game of jacks. Sam, 3½, was chasing a small barn kitten across the yard with the dignified concentration of a nearly 4-year-old man. Merritt said, Job. Job said, Merritt. She said, Sam has not thrown any object over any fence in 11 months. Job said, I know. Merritt said, I would like to note it. Job said, it is noted. Sam caught the kitten. He held her up. He announced her name, Butter, to the porch. Merritt said, Job. Job said, yes. She said, it turned out to be a very lucky Rattle. Job Renner kissed his wife's temple and put his arm around his small daughter and understood that the good slow country had, in its good slow way, arranged a churchyard prayer and a tin rattle and a baby's wail at 10 past 10 on a Saturday morning in June, and had, in that one small honest arrangement, given a widowed rancher's 3 small children, the mother they had not learned yet to ask for, and given a Iowa schoolteacher, whose sister had died on a Tuesday, the whole rest of a household to walk into on the following Thursday. And so it had.